If you clicked on this video, chances are you have played or watched at least one game of the We Were Here series. And if you ever wondered what the backstory of this whole franchise is, you've come to the right place.
Just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us.
Just note that this video is obviously a huge spoiler, so you may want to play or watch the games before watching this video. Now, the We Were Here series includes the first game, which is called We Were Here, the second game called We Were Here 2, and the third game, which goes by the name of We Were Here Together. There's also a fourth game called We Were Here Forever that is planned to get released this year. The We Were Here games have always had the focus on solving puzzles by working together, and they haven't really had a story to follow. Only in the third game you will get some cutscenes and a cinematic ending. There are many hints in the games, but stringing them together is not easy and took a really long time. To understand the story you really have to watch all the cutscenes, trailers, read all the books you can find, and even look at the Steam cards of the games. So before I start telling you the story of Castle Rock, here's some interesting information about it first. So the story takes place in the 16th century in a castle, which is called Castle Rock. Castle Rock belongs to the kingdom of Amber Adelaide. The Steam cards of the game We Were Here 2 suggest that there are four major figures in the story: the King Bartholomeus, his Queen Leonora, the Court Jester, and Prison Ward Brutus. These can further be identified with the heraldries that can be seen on the Steam cards and throughout the game, which is the Lion, this one belongs to King Bartholomeus, the Heron, which belongs to the Queen Leonora, the Boar, which belongs to Prison Ward Brutus, the Raccoon, which belongs to Court Jester, and we also have the Stag, the Ermine, the Eagle and the Badger, but they don't seem to play a big role in the story yet. Now there are more characters on the stained glass in We Were Here 2, but you can't really identify them. Like this guy for example, he kinda looks like Brutus but clearly is someone else. He also has the boar as his symbol, but he remains anonymous. Same goes for these two women, who cannot really be identified, but are most likely Emilia and Katja, two of the king's daughters. There are also these two guys, who are most likely the two sons of the king and the queen. So now that we have this out of the way, let's get to the main story. As mentioned before, there was the King Bartholomeus, the Queen Leonora, Philip, Jan and Waldemar, who were the three sons, and Emilia, Katja and Charlotte, the daughters. The king's journal suggests that Charlotte, one of the king's daughters, died at a really young age. The death of the daughter also caused the queen distancing herself from the king, which only got worse when Philip, one of the sons, died of the devil's fire, as it is described here. Shortly after, the second son, Jan, dies in a horrendous bloodshed, and with him Waldemar. The bloodshed described was most likely a battle, which is also a puzzle in the second game where you have to take chess pieces on a board. At the end of the puzzle the game looks like to be won, until the king's voice can be heard, saying the following.
Victory. Wait, this was a trap. My sons, what have I done?
This is also directly connected to the execution logbook, in which the last two entries are Waldemar and Jan. You can read that both of them died on March 1st, 1531, and under there you can also see the same phrase from the puzzle, which says "What have I done?" written in blood. This logbook belonged to the king, as you can clearly see with the stylized B at the top side. But why are they on the execution list? Maybe even Prison Ward Brutus had something to do with their deaths, because if Jan and Waldemar really died being trapped in a battle, how did they end up in this logbook? So there are some theories about the deaths, but there is not a clear answer. Nevertheless, this battle leaves the king without an heir and is likely the start of him going mad. After the death of Waldemar, Emilia, who was supposed to marry him, has been going off to the woods, which is concerning to the king and the queen. Now in the second game, there are love letters to be found, which are written by Leonora, judging by her stylized L. In this letter she writes to a certain B. Now you would think that the B is obviously Bartholomeus, the king. But she also writes about the love being a mistake. So if it's not Bartholomeus, it has to be Brutus, the prison ward. Which means that Leonora had an affair with Brutus behind King Bartholomeus' back. This is also confirmed by a second love letter, which is from Brutus to Leonora. We also get to read a journal entry from the Queen's Lady-in-Waiting. It tells us that Jan and her were in love, and when the king found out, he decided to throw her into an arena to die. Now we get back to the king. In another journal entry of him, he writes that he blames his daughters of trying to get his crown and describes the queen as useless. He also writes about some affairs he had and the outcomes of it, which were a dead bastard son, which could be Valdemar, and worthless girls, who he all threw into the arena. The only people he trusted now were his guard and the Court Jester, and what happened after that can best be described as the king's madness. So let's quickly sum it up. Charlotte, one of the king's daughters, died very young. Philip died from an illness early on, and Jan and Valdemar died in a battle, maybe even because of him. Also, the king finds out that his wife is having an affair. So all these things make him go insane, and he starts by throwing his remaining two daughters into the arena, where they die. But what follows after that is much worse. The king's madness is the plot of the theater at the end of the first game, and it goes like this.
There once was a castle filled with life, and there lived a king with his wife. All were happy and all was good, until the king killed all he could. Standing in blood, he proudly said.
After that, a distorted voice can be heard, and credits to Soviet Womble for having the idea to slow the audio down, which reveals the following message.
Standing in blood, he proudly said.
The dead can also still be heard whispering and even seen haunting the castle, as you see in this video. So after the king killed all he could, we get to the Court Jester, the king's most trusted servant. This section of the story is also the main part of We Were Here Together, the third game in the series. After all of the king's heirs died, the king wanted a new one. But the king also grew older, so his time was slowly running out. The Court Jester advised him now to acquire eternal life. To do this, a ritual has to be performed. The ritual has also been mentioned in the second game, and it basically goes like this. It says that the ritual should take place in the gazebo from the second game. And if you look at the names written down, it looks like the plan was to give the king, his guard, the ward Brutus, and the advisor eternal life, with a priest there to perform it maybe. The ones that should be sacrificed are Leonora, Katja, Emilia, and a fourth woman, who could be the queen's lady in waiting. Now it's not really sure if the ritual really went down like this, or if they did it on someone else. But if it happened like described in the book, then where's prison ward Brutus and the king's guard? So it's not likely that it happened like that. It's more likely that the king also killed prison ward Brutus after finding out about his affair with the queen. In the trailer, the jester also sings about a second deal the king supposedly made with demons, that the jester didn't know of. This deal also caused the reign of King Bartholomeus to be cold and snowy, as you can see in all of the games. After the creation of the dagger from the ritual, it was locked away. The jester however found it and used it. Now I'm not sure on who he used it, or if he used it alone or with someone else. But one of the king's dead daughters also talks about the jester betraying the king. And that brings us to our third theory, which could also very well mean that the jester used the dagger on the king himself to get the crown as well. This part of the story is very spongy and leaves a lot of room open for interpretation. Anyway, the jester ends up being trapped in the castle forever, and the king's body being dead, but his soul presumably being still alive, as seen in the cutscenes in the third game. So this is what happened before the We Were Here series took place. Now let's get to what happens in the games. In We Were Here, two explorers lose the group in an expedition. Because they're lost, they decide to shoot off a flare gun, and in the light of the flare, they see a castle. Castle Rock to be precise. But once they enter the castle, they get knocked out by an unknown person. Now, They are separated from each other and have to solve puzzles together by talking on walkie-talkies. But once they are at the exit, only one explorer can get out of the castle, and the other one gets left behind. In the second game, We Were Here Too, the story is pretty similar, but this time the two explorers that get lost see a flare being fired from the castle and decide to go there. Once they enter though, the gate behind them closes, and because there are two ways, they split up. Once again, they have to solve puzzles by talking on walkie-talkies. This game has two endings. In the first ending, only one explorer can escape, and the other one gets left behind. The second ending can only be achieved if you flip a lot of levers in the previous puzzles, and in it, both explorers can escape. However, one of them turns around and goes back in the castle for some reason. So both endings have one player escape, and the other one stay in the castle. In We Were Here Together, the two explorers start at a camp after they get a call for help by an unknown person. They go to the coordinates where the call was from, and it turns out to be the castle, where they also see a flare being fired off. They enter the castle and again, you guessed it, they have to solve puzzles by using walkie-talkies. But this time, the game goes deeper into the story. Because as the explorers progress through the castle, they get to watch several cutscenes. One explorer can hear the sound of conversations about the dagger, the ritual and the jester. The dagger from the ritual rebuilds itself in his hands as more puzzles get solved. The other player finds a third explorer who has been supposedly trapped in the castle for some time. The explorer also gives him instructions on how to build a soul stone. So after the players finished all of their puzzles, they successfully created a soul stone and they rebuilt the dagger. But after the soul stone is made, the third explorer takes it and lifts his disguise, and it turns out that it was the jester all along, who needs the soul stone and the dagger for the ritual to end his and the king's curse. After the dagger is complete, the essence of one of the king's daughters is restored and she appears as a ghost. So now, the jester wants to kill the explorers with the dagger in order to take their souls, which then should get transferred directly into the soul stone and lift the curse of him and the king. But the king's daughter doesn't want that to happen, and so she is fighting off the jester. But then the two explorers have to make a decision, because to be saved, one of them has to be sacrificed. After one of the explorers gets sacrificed, the other one can escape, and when he wakes up in front of the castle, he fires off a flare into the sky. In the last cutscene you can also see how the soul gets transferred into the soul stone and the king being brought back to life, or at least his soul. So what does all of this mean? According to the release trailer of We Were Here Too, all of the puzzles in the castle were built by a general and the king, with the purpose being to always trap one of the two people in the castle. So the common theory is that after the king got cursed, he and the general and maybe the jester as well made these puzzles in order to trap people in the castle and take their souls to lift his curse. The timeline for the games, however, is not entirely clear, but the most common one is the order in which the games got released. But it suggests that the stories of the games are all connected and happened in a short amount of time. Because the explorers in We Were Here shoot off a flare gun after getting lost, which could be the same flare the explorers in We Were Here 2 see, and the explorer who escaped in We Were Here 2 could also be the one making the call for help that the explorers in We Were Here Together receive. The only thing that speaks against this theory are the walkie-talkies, which all seem to be from a different technological era. The fourth game of the series is going to continue with the series, or maybe even end it entirely. Because in We Were Here Together, one explorer dies and one escapes, there are only two explorers left in the castle. This guy from We Were Here and this guy from We Were Here 2, which are the two playable characters in We Were Here Forever. The trailer doesn't tell us much about the story of the game though. So if you wanna know how the story continues, you will have to wait until We Were Here Forever gets released, which is planned to be in 2021. So that's it guys, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it because it took a really long time to make. Maybe even so much that you liked the video, or write me a friendly comment.